Well, hello, boys and girls. It's when I feel like 8 o'clock, and I'm Pearl of Wisdom. You're listening to my NHL Pearls of Wisdom. Yes, you are. Okay, there was a trade today. I almost said the Lightning. The Vegas Golden Knights traded Gusev, who I thought maybe they might make some room for him and keep him, but they didn't. And they traded him to the New Jersey Devils. And if you've watched my video about where he might go, that's where I thought he would probably go. The thing is, I thought they'd get a little more than a second and third for him. So, what I wanted to look at today is why didn't Vegas sign Gusev, who had 80 some points in the KHL? Players like him have shown to be do very well. In Florida, Dadonov is a 50-60 point player, and he didn't get as many points as Gusev did. Now, Gusev is a smaller player, plays a little bit different, but he's still got a lot of scrappiness for a small guy. I'm sure he could be a 50-60 point player. He got the same kind of points that Panarin did, if you could imagine that. He could be over a 60 point player. The rumor was he was asking for $4 million a year. He ends up signing with New Jersey for 4.5. So maybe he was always asking for 4.5. So why did Vegas not sign him? Well, they could have traded Cody Eakin and probably got not much, like a third round pick, I bet, for Cody Eakin for 1 year. Maybe not that much, but possibly. They could have traded Tuck, which would have been ill-advised. He's on a great contract, great center. There were some players, though, that they could have picked. The problem that Vegas has is they're over the cap already. For this year, they've only got 6 defensemen signed. If one of those defensemen go down, they're going to have to bring up people from the minors, and they're already capped out. That's difficult. But even more difficult is the fact that next year, Nick Holden, John Merrill, and Derek England are UFAs, and they have to find some way to fill out the roster. If they sign Gusev, it's going to be they're going to have one hell of a time, and probably are going to have to trade somebody like Riley Smith or William Karlsson, who have been with that team and grown with that team since its beginning, in order to do that. I think this was a difficult decision for them. I don't think it was easy. I think they had to really stew over this. The other problem you have is, let's say you give them the 4.5 and you trade somebody like Riley Smith or Jonathan Marchessault, who, by the way, have no trade clauses in their contract. So you don't even know if they're going to accept it. It looks like a no trade, no movement clause. Or is it? No. It's a minimum no trade clause. So they would have to pick some teams, and it would decrease the value as well. Now, let's say you decide to do that. You have, like, say, Riley Smith for the next 3 years. But what happens after the 2 years when Gusev is done? He can bolt back to the KHL. He's got you under the gun. He has 2 great years. Now you're going to be paying him probably stone money or more if it's really great. And your cap issue is getting bigger and bigger. I think that's the reason, at the end of it all, the reason why they let him go. It just would have been too much for. That's unfortunately the way the cap world is in the NHL now. It's not that he wasn't a good player or a really good player. You see it over the league right now, where there's there's Marner and Point in Tampa Bay, and these teams are actually considering trading them. I promise you. And these are great players. It has nothing to do with the players. It has to do with how you spend your cap. Depth is so important in the NHL, and if you don't have it, you probably aren't going to win. You could have, like, a McDavid, for instance, in Edmonton, and you can see what will happen if you have no depth. That's the reason why I said before they signed Draisaitl, they should have traded him, but we'll get into that some other time, won't we? The question was, now I thought they should get more for the value of the player. But here's the problem. Uh, they had to give up. They got a second and third, which they did need draft picks. But for his talent, you should be able to get a first. Here's the problem. Ottawa isn't going to give you a first because that is going to be one hell of a first. If they did, it would have been lotto protected, and who knows when Ottawa is ever going to have a pick that's not in the lotto. Not to mention, they don't want to spend money, period. So it looks like to me that the owner is waiting out for the Seattle deal, and they'll sell the team so he can make the whatever million you get from that. But anyway, that's another story. The Winnipeg Jets could have. Problem is they need defense really bad, and they have to sign Laine or decide what they're going to do with him. They got enough on their plate right now without throwing in somebody else there. Colorado Avalanche have to sign Rantanen. They have 16 point some million in cap space, but they do have to sign Rantanen. This is a team that I think could have definitely tried, though. The problem being is they're in the Western Conference, and maybe the Vegas didn't want to strengthen the Western Conference any more than it had to. But I think this could have been somebody that was very interested and maybe even would have thought of giving up a first-round pick for him. But I think the Western Conference thing plays here quite a bit. Looking down their roster, even if they sign Rantanen, if they sign him for 2 years at 4.4, it probably isn't going to hurt him too much. I would have said that would have been the best other team to choose from that would have been able to do it. Now, besides that, as you start getting into other teams, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they already have Nyquist, they got to sign Werenski, and they don't have draft picks to give. Now, you got to remember also, next year's draft is super thick. It's very deep. That second rounder could almost be considered a first. I forgot to mention that. Columbus gave up all their draft picks trying to go for one big push last year. They only have one first next year, and they're not trading that. It's too deep of a draft. That's pretty much. Although I think they probably would have strongly considered this deal, in the end, I think they wanted to keep their picks. In a cap world, they're so valuable. Philadelphia Flyers, they're not capped out, but they have to sign Provorov, and they have a few other players to sign. I don't think they wanted to mess any more than they already did with their team. Plus, they have a lot of good wingers, which we already know the New Jersey Devils, they could have done it. The Minnesota Wild could have did something here. If they could have traded Zucker. I think it's possible. The whole reason why they were trying to trade Zucker is they wanted to go for Gusev, but it didn't work out. The Los Angeles Kings. Now, there's one team that could have did it, but again, they're in the West. Although it's only for 2 years, and LA is not going to be a thing for a while. I don't know why they wouldn't have given it a shot. They couldn't have given their first up, but they certainly could have given a second and a third. The only thing I can think of is that they don't want to be good. They're tanking. They probably don't want to be good. There's no reason. They don't know if they're going to be able to sign Gusev after 2 years. They don't want to take a chance of throwing prospects in a rebuild. Every team up after that, I could go down the list, are either capped out or have players that they have to sign that are more important than Gusev. Hence, the only real two teams they had were Colorado and New Jersey. I wouldn't even doubt that Colorado was offering a little more, but when you're a playoff team, and Colorado's going to be a playoff team, it's not really wise to strengthen the teams in the West. At least strengthen the teams in the East to give you a chance to get to the finals. Strengthening New Jersey, even with all of this, maybe they're not even a contender. They might make the playoffs, and I think they've done the best this summer. But it was probably the best you could do, unfortunately. That's my full 42%, boys and girls. That's all I have to give. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. I'll send you a My NHL Pearls of Wisdom necklace signed by me and helicopters right to your door.